Alright, I think the integrated and multi-level model does the best job of describing prison culture because it explains both the deprivation and importation models, which sound the most realistic to me. Instead of putting the blame on inmate behavior and prison conditions or the inmate's background, it explains how both models can interact with each other and inmates bring different attributes inside the prison system. Criminal histories, gang ties, and experience into prison, but the prison environment can increase or reduce these behaviors. I think that this makes the integrated model the best choice because prisons are not created by just one, or prison gangs are not just created by one thing. They're created from a combination of survival needs, prison conditions, and experiences inmates have already had before they came into prison. I think this model explains prison gangs better than the others because prison gangs are influenced by both outside and inside street culture in the environment inside prison. Many inmates already have gang ties before coming to prison in the first place, which supports the importation model. And at the same time, prisons can encourage gang involvement because inmates are constantly dealing with a sense of fear, violence, overcrowding, and racial tension, and lack of trust with staff in the first place, which supports the deprivation model. I believe that the integrated model connects both of these. For instance, uh, two inmates may enter the same prison, but one with a violent background or prior gang involvement might have a different experience to the prison than someone without a background with prison, and increase the pressure to join groups for prison, but personal history can also play a huge role in who becomes involved in gang activity. The documentary gave a lot of good examples about how prison culture and structure contribute to gang life. One of the biggest focuses in the documentary was about survival, and many former gang members explain that prison can be extremely dangerous. People often feel forced to join gangs for protection in an environment where violence can happen quickly and trust is limited. Gangs provide security and support. The documentary also talks about how race plays a major role in prison culture. In many prisons, inmates separate themselves by race or neighborhood affiliation, and gangs often organize around those identities. This creates a strong sense of loyalty, but it also increases the likelihood of conflict between rival gangs. Another important point that the documentary shows us that gangs are extremely organized inside the prisons. And some gangs enforce rules, they collect debts, control the movement of contraband, and even decide how violence is carried out. In a lot of ways, gangs fill gaps inmates believe prison staff cannot fully control, and this connects to the administrative control because weak prison management, overcrowding, and understaffing can allow gangs to gain influence and power, which or when prisons are poorly managed and unsafe, inmates may rely heavily on gangs for protection and stability. I do think prison gangs serve several functions inside prison. Even though they're often harmful, gangs can provide protection, identity, social belonging, financial opportunities, and some kind of emotional support. For some inmates, joining a gang may feel like it's the only way to survive prison life. And I think that the video shows that gangs often create a sense of family and loyalty, especially for people who already feel disconnected from the outside world before incarceration. But at the same time, these groups also contribute heavily to violence, intimidation, drug trafficking, and retaliation inside the prison. One thing the integrated model does not fully explain is why inmates completely reject gang culture even when they experience the same prison conditions as everyone else. Some inmates choose to join, some inmates choose to avoid gangs because of religion, family support, personal values, or, because they want to stay out of trouble ultimately. And the model explains behavior patterns because it doesn't fully explain everyone's individual choice. Human behavior can be complicated for the most part, and not everyone will respond to prison pressure in the same way. And overall, a realistic strategy for reducing gang violence would be creating more access to rehabilitation programs, education, and mental health treatment, and uplifting staff interactions, more positive interactions with staff. When inmates have opportunities to improve themselves, I believe that they can build connections outside of gang culture. They may feel less dependent on gangs for protection or maybe even a sense of identity. And better staffing and stronger prison management could also reduce gang influence by creating a safer environment where people don't feel like they have to constantly need protection. Prison and gangs will probably never disappear completely, but reducing overcrowding and improving prison conditions could lower the amount of violence and gang control inside probably the majority of correctional institutions.